Kia ora and welcome to the Itinerary. Today's episode will focus on accommodation, an absolute necessity for all travellers. Accommodation comes in all shapes, sizes, colours, themes and budgets, and as many can attest to, can be a really amazing industry to work in. Challenging, but a great opportunity to build an incredibly successful career. As our viewers know by now, we kick things off by getting to understand how each sector is doing during these challenging times. Sitting on our panel today is Amy Robbins, Executive Director of the New Zealand Hotel Owners Association, and Paul Columbus, who is the General Manager of Novotel Auckland Airport and Tourism Industry Aotearoa Hotel Regional Chair. Amy and Paul, how wonderful to have you. Your titles are a mouthful, but I love it. Tell us, how is your wonderful hotel industry doing at the moment?
Well, I mean, we've suffered obviously through COVID-19, which a lot of businesses have, but tourism's been at the forefront, a little bit like aeroplanes.
Yes.
We see hotels as really being the sort of the backbone to the tourism industry, and hotels are about 300 hotels in New Zealand,
neat.
and that equates to something like 35,000 hotel rooms. And the hotels do attract sort of high net worth individuals, so we rely a lot on international tourism.
Yes.
Australia itself makes up about 40% of our market. So we have been very badly hit by COVID. When it hit, so between sort of April, May and June, hotel revenue fell by about 75%.
Oh, it would have been a stark discovery at that time, right?
Loss of millions and billions of dollars. So you'll see a lot of hotels that were mothballed. Other hotels, particularly in the regions that were more reliant on international visitors, particularly from China, so the West Coast, for example, and Southland, really quite heavily impacted.
Sure.
But we are a resilient industry. We're a hospitable industry.
Definitely.
And we are just over the moon with how Kiwis are supporting tourism in New Zealand through the Tourism New Zealand Restart Program. It's absolutely amazing.
And how have you managed with the isolation of guests coming in? Talk us through that system and what it is that you've had to deal with to make sure that our people essentially are safe.
Well, I think what is really important to understand is that the isolation business has been a lifeline to exactly what Amy has been saying.
Agreed.
And it's been a thankful task because we've been able to assist in the repatriation of New Zealanders, but we're also playing a part in keeping New Zealand safe. It's a partnership, and our company particularly has been in partnership with the Ministry of Health.
Sure.
And it's seeing the lifeline that people's jobs are maintained and secure, but we're also welcoming home our friends and family.
And how wonderful for them to know they have the safe haven to come to. Our next panellist, Jenny Powell, General Manager at Visitor Point and Chair of Backpacker Youth Adventure. Where are you at? What have been the experiences?
BIATA is the voice of the Backpacker Youth Adventure Travel Association. So part of that is our hostels. The hostels have been finding it pretty tough at the moment. It's good on the weekends for them, as I'm sure it is for all accommodations. Kiwis have been supporting, but traditionally hostels are not the choice of accommodation for New Zealand travellers. So it has been reliant on international visitors. At the moment, the struggles really that they're facing is the demand. And still in New Zealand at the moment, there's 25,000 high-value international work and holiday visa travellers.
Yes.
So they are still helping the hostel sector out. Obviously, there's two sides to that help. They look after the lower paid roles traditionally, but also they travel during the week.
Is there a way that we as local New Zealanders can support your business and industry?
Definitely for the hostels, yeah. I guess the reliance on trying to smooth out that curve of just weekend travel. Hostels are a reasonably priced alternative. A lot of our members have been using the lockdown to pivot and change some of their rooms from maybe dorms to double rooms. And, if you stay in a hostel, then you've maybe got a little bit more money to support the activities as well, which is important.
I think it's really important. The old adage years ago, see your own country first, it really comes to the fore now.
It does
and
indeed.
look, talking just even outside the major accommodation area, if you look at the book of batches,
Yes.
and if you look at campsites, pre-bookings, Christmas, New Year, New Zealanders are taking a different slant to things
For
again.
sure.
And there's going to be something really great. Our hotels are seeing great holiday traffic. We're adapting in the digital age.
Yes.
If you look at the online mechanisms that we used during lockdown and looking at businesses today that are expanding on these technologies
Yes.
to help their business keep revenues going, it's great to see cash registers ticking.
Isn't
And
it
that's
just?
what we've got to see. We've got to support these things.
Connectivity is such a crucial thing in this day and age, which is why we all are feeling a little bit claustrophobic with our international borders closed, and
Yes.
just on the borders. I mean, we're not going to see those opening anytime soon. But look, it's a great opportunity to really look at the future workforce of the New Zealand hotel sector.
Yes.
About 20,000 people work in the sector at its peak, full-time, part-time, casual, a mix of expertise, and a lot of educational career pathways. You'll see some people who started as porters who end up as being procurement managers for leading, New Zealand-owned and operated hotel chains.
Yes. Now, Paul, let's talk about international hotel chains. How are we faring if we compare ourselves to what's happening internationally?
Well, I think it's a changing environment. If you only have to look in the last 48 hours, the UK is putting a self-isolation policy for their travellers from Spain. I think don't put numbers against things at the moment because it's a changing environment by the minute. And I fear that this is where we're going to have our industry hampered, but this is where we have to go back to local. How are we going to cope and beat what we are challenged with? And the international scene, I mean, you've only got to look at Qantas not wanting to do any international flights for 12 more months. Those are signals. They'll work with third-party airlines, their partners in their alliance schemes.
Yes.
So realistically, we've got to be patient.
Yes.
I think it's actually going to be a long time, maybe 18 months. I mean, don't quote me, but the reality is with the Trans-Tasman border possibly out to Q2 next year, the Pacific border maybe Q1 next year. We've really got to be patient about these things and use our ingenuity. This is the time for ideas.
But I think it's good to look at this from an optimistic point of view.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've never dealt with anything like this before, so we have a completely blank canvas. It's an opportunity for us to be creative, for us to be innovative. From a global perspective, I mean, New Zealand is one of the countries that got the international headline for managing to control COVID. We're seen as a safe destination.
They are looking into us all the time.
Now's an opportunity to actually show the world real Kiwi ingenuity. You'll see more robots in hotels. You'll see contactless room entry, a whole variety of different things.
I think it'll be essential because the traveller will be more savvy. Safety will be at the forefront. But I think we've also got to think about how we get our people into work.
Yes.
And, that's the key thing because technology can often displace. It provides convenience. But what are we doing about giving some assurity to younger people coming up, giving that canvas that our industry can provide, which is blank?
So, events. 2021, we were gearing up for fantastic, big global events. As you said, that's probably not going to happen in the near future. How are you preparing yourself for the changing shape of events and how that plays into your industry?
And of course, you have APEC that was due to start, I think, in December and was going to go on for a 12-month period, now being virtual. It was a big blow for hotel operators. There were a lot of hotels in Auckland particularly who had been renovating and expanding their rooms. But look, I mean, we are an adaptive industry and we have to look at other ways to market ourselves and look at our product and look at our offering, look at the discerning traveller. As Paul mentioned, safety is going to come first for them. So I spoke before about sort of innovation and creativity. So yes, we do have to look at our tourism sector. We do have to look at how we market ourselves.
Absolutely.
We do have to reevaluate that. There's also a lot of new hotels that are coming on board
Yes,
as well, particularly in Auckland. So there's more offering and more variety.
Great.
And we spoke before about the variety of, you've got your backpackers and Airbnb and hotels. So there is quite a diverse variety of offering for travellers, both domestic and international.
But if there are some changing or some predictions that you have that you would like to see happen in the next 2 to 5 years within each of your area of expertise, share that with us, please.
I think, it's going to take time for tourism to come back as the number one industry, I guess, especially internationally. Within our industry, one of the biggest challenges is probably fulfilling a labour shortage moving forward. So initiatives like Let's Go with Tourism is really important at the moment. For the next kind of 6 to 12 months, it would be great if we could extend the work and holiday visas that are currently in the country so that we can fulfill that labour shortage in the shorter term. But initiatives like Go with Tourism, where it's encouraging that mid-management position and higher, I think are really going to play a big role especially within the hostel network, because traditionally it is filled by work and holiday visas or internationals.
Sure.
A couple of things for me, I think. Internalising our domestic travel potential even more.
Great.
And taking significant advantage of the dollar spend we have available still in New Zealand. But one of those things, to get that far, you've got to have people. And I think that we need a lot more support in apprentice chefing, for example. The trades, the major trades in the building sector, for example, have got a priority on apprenticeships.
Yes, indeed.
Our sector's been totally overlooked, yet it's the biggest, or has been the biggest contributor
so
to
let's
the
not
economy.
overlook that, please.
From where we put our people and entice career enhancement. So it's about the travel, but it's about the people and getting jobs.
I mean, look, I agree completely. It is definitely about people. We are in a situation now because the workforce has shrunk so much that we are going to have to look at developing our future workforce, and that work needs to happen now. I mean, New Zealand's always prided itself on being a country of diversity, a country that celebrates ethnicity. And if you look at the hotel sector, the makeup of that, I mean, we have a lot of migrant workers that come over that fill very, very crucial roles, and that's mixed in with Kiwis, and they work together. There are a lot of restrictions around migrant workers in relation to the hours they can work, and when they come into New Zealand, they can't work in other areas, so that definitely needs to be relaxed.
Well, that's all we have time for today. If you're a regular viewer, you probably are already aware of who I'm going to introduce next. It's Jason Biggs with another self-help video we definitely need to take advantage of.
There are 5 elements that create a sense of well-being in our lives. Career, do you like what you do every day? Social, do you have strong relationships and love in your life? Community, do you take pride in your community? Physical, do you have good health and enough energy to do what you want to do every day? Financial, do you have enough money to do the things you want to do in your life? Well-being affects the number of sick days we take, our job performance, burnout, and the likelihood that we stay or leave an organisation. And the element with the highest influence is our career. It is critical to be able to identify, describe, and leverage our strengths to help us choose a career, understand how we might best learn and study, build and maintain relationships, unleash our motivation, develop our business. But why are strengths so critical? Convention says most, if not all, behaviours can be learned. The best in role display the same behaviours. Weakness fixing leads to success. In contrast, a strengths-based approach says only some behaviours can be learned. The best in a role deliver the same outcomes using different behaviours. Weakness fixing prevents failure. Strengths building leads to success.
Thanks again, Jason, for your wise words. If you are interested in further guidance, please contact Jason via his website, jasonbiggs.nz. Now, in our first 3 episodes, we brought in educators to discuss the impact on studying tourism at this time and to provide tips and guidance on education options. This week, however, we will be educating our accommodation providers out there with what will no doubt be fantastic advice and insight from some of New Zealand's leading hoteliers. I'm so very pleased to welcome Les Morgan, Chief Operating Officer of Sudima Hotels and Hind Management, and with him, Graham Stevens, Chief Executive Officer of Sky City Auckland, and Franz Mascarenas, Managing Director of Cordis Auckland. Tell me, how are you doing? How are you coping?
I think relative to where we were a few months ago, life's feeling a whole lot better in that we're open. We're through the lockdown, and it's just really good to be back in business. We're not back at levels that were there pre-COVID, but when we look around the world, it just feels like a privilege to be open and trading.
Yes.
Well, the journey's been really difficult, actually, and stressful, especially for our employees. That's probably the most difficult thing of the whole crisis.
Absolutely heart-wrenching, isn't it?
Yeah, they've been on a roller coaster, facing potential restructuring, and then in our case, calling them back, and in some cases, hurrying up and wait. So that's been the worst, but is seeing the pain in their eyes.
I think unprecedented is really a word that describes things quite well. And though I think all of us on this panel have had many years in the industry, I think we'll all still agree it's pretty much uncharted territory for a lot of us. Certainly it hit us in one go. But as Graham said, I think the positive aspect is at least we started to get back into business. We're starting to see a pickup, at least from the domestic market. And I think that's really what we want to do in the period ahead. We want to kind of stabilize and recover, and then hopefully move back into a period of growth.
Sure. It has been a tough, challenging ride, and I think it's fair to say your Sky City group have really faced some majors. Please tell us about that, and how is it that has led you into the preparation of where we are now?
Yeah, look, it's been an incredibly challenging year. Starting in our lives with the fire, where the convention centre that was so close to completion, and with it burning down, we had to close our property. We closed quite a bit of Auckland, for that matter, and so dealing with that was a real challenge. Fortunately, though, we had practice for a crisis in advance. We'd planned for a crisis. We weren't sure what. So, my advice for other businesses out there is we ran through a number of scenarios. We put the management team through them. We sort of knew what we were trying to do when it turned out to be a fire. We knew who was in charge and who was going to do what. So that helped us get through that. But we were barely finished with the aftermath of the fire when COVID arrived. So.
Gosh. And so how did your teams, and this is for all three of you, how did you empower and support your teams through this lockdown COVID-19 journey?
I think the thing we did immediately was inform people as quickly as we could, and really had an approach of oversharing with information. That was the key thing.
And you found that helpful?
We were very frank.
Good.
And, we tried to paint as good a picture as we could, but also wanted to pass on where we thought things were going. And as a leader, I guess especially someone older, we kind of had a sense probably of what was ahead of us. And maybe some of our younger people weren't aware of that.
Sure.
So we were pretty robust in those discussions. And they weren't easy, but I felt it was better to prepare them for the worst.
Yes.
As it turned out, it was worse. So I think that was a key part. It was just really good communication.
Right. And for you, Franz?
I think communication was really key. In any crisis situation, the need to communicate is certainly more enhanced. And I think that's what we did from day one. Like my colleagues here, we got into ongoing communication. Of course, there were a number of them who were in their own bubbles at home. So one needed to use email, and we had a whole band of our human resource colleagues actually calling every single member of the team, talking to them and explaining to them, well, this is what's happening in the hotel. And then as the alert levels changed, once again, we kept in communication just to get people more tuned into what was happening at the hotel.
Yeah.
And we were really pleased at alert level 1 to actually be able to bring back people into the hotel.
Why is it important to still invest into your hotel business?
Well, for us, we're building a brand new tower and adding another 250 odd rooms. So by October of next year, we'll be one of the largest single standing hotels in the country. And when we took that investment decision, it was a long-term plan. We wanted to ensure that we were at the forefront of the hospitality industry, even from a size perspective.
Yeah.
And I think an aspect which is probably not so evident is the fact that when we're building, we have zero cost from a land perspective because we're actually building in our existing footprint.
Sure.
And basically enhancing the asset value of the property. For sure, I certainly acknowledge that in the next couple of years, like we're all saying, things are going to be very, very difficult. But I think it's important at the same time that we get ourselves in a position that we'll be ready to capitalize when the actual demand starts to flow back.
For sure.
That's really the reason. It's not just the tower. We're redoing our 8 restaurant. We're building a brand new bar. So we're going full steam ahead to make sure, like I said, that we want to be ready when the growth starts.
Great.
Really.
Maybe you can share with us what it is in terms of that growth and development. What is your forecasting?
Well, we've got 3 new hotel developments underway.
Great.
Which will be complete within the next 18 months. As far as I'm saying, when you take an investment decision, they're not short-term decisions.
Of course.
And our shareholders certainly have a medium to long-term view.
Sure.
So that was never going to stop developments that were already underway.
Sure.
Of course, they're all probably expecting a dividend sooner than later. So that short term is going to be a real challenge for us. I mean, we certainly foresee that things will be disrupted for at least 4 or 5 years. But there'll probably be a loosening of the borders. There'll be more exceptions of ad hoc groups. But there's going to be disruption continuing.
There is continuous disruption, but how we map that out and plan for those clusters, I guess.
Well, also, I think from an investment point of view, you like to look through those things.
You have to,
because one thing we do know from our experience is that the recovery will be extremely strong. And New Zealand is positioned very well. Post-GFC, we failed to invest in infrastructure in New Zealand, especially tourism infrastructure. And I think we've got the message this time.
Yeah.
And we'll be really well placed.
What is the message that you can share to our young people?
I think first of all, people need to view tourism as an industry which is here to stay. And I think whilst there will be certainly hardships for the foreseeable future, like there are in every other industry, incidentally, I think the long-term future for tourism is great. And like we were saying, we are cautiously optimistic that even in that first couple of years, when the Trans-Tasman bubble does come on play, I think between Australia and New Zealand, there is actually a reasonably large-sized market for all of us to partake of.
Yeah.
So even in the short term, I see the possibility of some form of stability before that growth phase.
Sure.
But I think for students who are doing courses, etc., whether they are for a year or 2 or 3 years, I think they're getting themselves ready for an industry that is simply going to burst on the horizon. And we've talked about the great benefits that people will see coming to New Zealand.
Yes.
When all this suppressed travel demand starts to open up. So I think it's still a great industry.
What are some of the outcomes, some of the suggestions, or some of the hopes that you would like to share with your accommodation providers?
Oh, I think that there's still lots of opportunity. I mean, I know it's an overused phrase that disruption brings opportunity, but there is. And I certainly think for a young person, one thing I would just go back to that question is that, we didn't get our roles last week. We've built a career. So if your determination is still to be to have a career, then you've got to start now. It's like an investment. You've got to start now. And the advice I'd have for younger people is you've got to remain connected to the industry.
Yeah.
When I look to interview someone or meet someone, I look to see, are they working?
Yes.
Even if it's part-time or casual, you've got to have your foot in the door.
Sure.
You can't give up on your dream. And I know in my case, the journey through hospitality has been difficult, but I always had my eye on, growing.
The next step.
And so you've got to be patient with that, and you've just got to do the hard work. But
Sure.
there are lots of opportunity. In fact, This disruption has caused a lot of people to leave tourism. And for me, that just means there's gaps. Because some people have come to the conclusion that tourism is not for them.
Sure.
A lot of older people or more experienced people. So, and we would certainly welcome younger people because we need new ideas.
Sure.
And there are new problems to solve. I think it's actually quite exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just great time to join.
Yeah, I think you've got to look through what is hopefully a reasonably short-term period of disruption. And we are doing that. And I think anyone looking at the industry should do that. I think most of us have right-sized for the foreseeable 12 to 18 months.
We've
so we should be sustainable. And it's a career which I think skills people up globally.
Yes.
It's a talent that can take you anywhere, and it employs people from any backgrounds.
Absolutely.
School leavers or university postgraduates. Tourism offers a great career. And it's not about the next 18 months. It's about decades to come in your careers if you're young. So I certainly wouldn't discourage, I would only encourage people to look at it.
I agree.
And I think what we've learned and what all businesses are doing are looking to New Zealand even more.
Yes.
And we should be employing more and more from within New Zealand so that when tourists come here, they get that touch point with the country.
Yes.
They've come all the way curious to find out about this wonderful country and how well it's done. When they arrive and interact with staff, they should be staff that are representative of the country.
Next up, we will hear from Kate Godfrey of Madison Recruitment on how to get work ready if you have been displaced from your tourism job because of COVID-19 or if you've decided to make a career change. Followed by yet another great success story that I know you will love. Stay tuned.
Interviews are two-way. You want to impress the interviewer, but you also want to make sure that it's the right role for you. Unless you're told otherwise, arrive about 10 minutes early. If you're running late, give them a call and let them know. And then when you do arrive, make sure you turn your phone off before you go into the interview. Don't arrive carrying a coffee or chewing gum or smelling like smoke. Be pleasant to the person that's greeting you. First impressions are really important. During the interview, smile, speak clearly, and try not to fidget too much. If you don't understand a question, ask them to repeat it. That's okay. You can take in your own notes or a copy of your CV with you, especially if you've worked in a lot of seasonal jobs. It can be quite comforting to have that information in front of you. Look for opportunities throughout the interview to sell yourself. Rather than answering a question with just a yes or no, you may want to delve in a little bit deeper on your experience. When discussing previous jobs, try to focus on yourself and your achievements. The interviewer wants to hear what you did and your impact, rather than just about what the company did. A lot of businesses conduct interviews using the STAR technique. That's STAR. It's essentially like telling a story where you use specific examples to show where you've demonstrated your skills before in other jobs. You should cover off what the situation was, what tasks were required, what actions you took, and what the result was. Sometimes you can do a bit of prep for these if you know what kind of skills the interviewer will be looking for. Practice answering questions in front of the mirror or with a flatmate or family member and ask them to give you feedback. The more often you interview, the more confident you'll become. Be honest in the interview, but try to stay positive too. Even if you had a bad experience in your last job, it's important not to speak negatively about previous employers. And above all, be yourself, but be the best version of yourself.
So I've been in the events and in tourism industry for going on 5 years now. I started off studying a Bachelor of International Hospitality Management to get my pathway into events. I studied at AUT and then I did my co-op placement at ATED, which is Auckland Tourism Events and Economic Development. That was in the major events team. I was there for 3 years and then with Go With Tourism, I've been here for 3 or 4 months now. I really thoroughly enjoyed today, which was our first Go With Tourism Expo. Because of COVID, there aren't too many operators hiring, so getting in touch with educators, operators, and just making it a fun space for students to come and engage with. Today's turnout was not what I expected, it was more, so it was great to see all the youth come through, and I think because it's one of the first events out of lockdown, it's just been really fun and busy and made the day go fast. You've got to be a little bit crazy and have a passion to do events. It is quite time consuming and can be stressful at times, but you've got to be good at working under pressure and troubleshooting on the spot. But if you have a passion for it and if you love planning, then go ahead and study and just get out there. Get experience as well, so not just going to events, but volunteer at some as well, so that you can see what's happening behind the scenes. Coming from Auckland Tourism and Events and Economic Development, we delivered some of Auckland's largest events, including Lantern Festival, Diwali Festival, and they're some of the most popular, and they bring in people from overseas as well as the Aucklanders and bringing us all together. To get some of the educators and operators to be a part of the expo was a little bit hard, just because they're working on skeleton crew, so they didn't have staff that they could dedicate to the 3 days. But offering it as a sponsored space really encouraged them, and just being part of something that they know is going to help with the rebuild made it a little bit easier. You can't go past events falls under tourism, the other 9 sectors, and I think today the youth coming to our space realise that. So there is tourism hospitality, there's road and travel, so there will definitely be a rebuild and there will be a future for tourism, and I think these kids are eager for it and they will come out at the perfect time for it.
That's it for this week's show. Join us next week when we will be discussing tourism activities with another great lineup of industry professionals. I look forward to chatting with you all again. Same place, same time. Go with tourism, supporting our tourism workforce. Haere rā.